Everybody. Jim Feist, Andy Isco here in Las Vegas. We're ready for going, man. I tell you what, here's an overview of a night shot in Las Vegas. I feel like I'm in Las Vegas now because not that I really got out of town much, but now that the football season is here, Vegas is where I'm going to be. And looks pretty nice, doesn't it? That night shot to Vegas, it's pretty good. I can't tell you what it looked like in 1970 when I came over the hill, and there was only 100,000 people here then. And I know you can't see Andy, but we know he's in the area. Anyway, we are coming out of the All-Star break of baseball. We got the trade deadlines over with. We got some moves. There's a lot of controversy about the Dodgers picking up Scooble. I don't know what that whistle is. I hope it's not me. Maybe it's Andy. Andy probably walked away and something's happening. Let's see, hope it goes away in a couple of seconds. But Andy, are you there? Where did he go? Well, this is live TV, or let's say live Proline TV. Anyway, I'm focusing obviously on football a lot. I'm playing baseball. I think I've had a bad day, 1-4, and then I hit a 4-0, and then a 2-1, and I think like a 3-0. So it's been kind of good. Andy's going to talk about some of the players that moved around, the trades, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know what happened to Andy. I'm really not sure. He disappeared. Not coming back. I don't know. I just have to know where he is. He was sitting there. I think he's probably. They will get rid of the. He'll come back when he comes back. But it was his microphone. I guess he left it on. He walked away and made all that noise. Anyhow, there's a lot going on. The Dodgers picked up Scooble. A lot of people are upset about that because, they feel like they're buying. Well, they are buying. The lack of controls in baseball over how much they can pay for players, and other teams to a degree can do the same thing if they wish to, but you can't take all the teams in the league and say they're all equal because they don't all make the same kind of money. They don't all have the same kind of TV deals, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of unfair. And I think baseball is a little bit outrageous in not having caps on what they do. But that's baseball. So anybody can beat the Dodgers in the World Series. We saw that last year. They probably should have lost. But that's a 7-game series. But when you take a long season with that talent, I mean, they got guys that aren't playing that are like Snell. He hasn't pitched in a while, been hurt. He's been hurt a lot, actually, over the last few years. Still gets a big paycheck. But over a long season, it's impossible to beat this team because they just got too much talent. In a short series, anybody can get hot and win. And the other teams that get to that point where they get to the World Series, they're pretty good anyway, but maybe don't have the roster and the depth, but maybe you don't need that kind of depth in a 7-game series. So anyway, that's something Andy will, I don't know what happened to him. I don't know where he went. I hope he's okay. So we're heading to the All-Star, or the baseball, the game in Canton. It's the Panthers against Arizona, and the opening line was Carolina 135 over -13. That's now mostly 1.5 Carolina, but it's interesting that places like Circa and Superbook are at Pick'em. I guess when you're talking about 1 or 1.5, you're really not talking about much of a line. So I'm not too excited about that. It comes down to what Andy was talking about before is that the coaches are really looking to develop the 53-man roster they're going to go into the regular season. So most of these coaches are not really interested about winning preseason games. Now, there are exceptions to every rule. There are coaches over the years like John Harbaugh that like to win games in the preseason. He's, of course, not playing this week. But when he was with Baltimore, they just consistently did cover spreads. So we're going to look at that going forward. Next Thursday, there's a bunch of games. We won't talk about those today. But in the baseball, you can see what's going on. It's choppy. Coming out of the trade deadline, it's a little bit scary. I try to look for teams that are doing well to continue to do well. They're hitting the ball. The pitchers are in shape. And I think the cream's going to rise to the top at this time of year. I hate laying runs. You lay 1.5 on a team. There's a way to modify that by going in and taking, let's say you got a 290 team. Well, you can so you put a little bit of money on the money line, and then because if they win the game and don't win by 2, but you're not getting the same kind of price for your dollars because you're laying $50 and you might be getting back 20. So that's not really a wise move. But a lot of people will take the 1.5, lay it at much lower price, hoping to win by 2, and they'll take a little bit of your money and put it on the money line. And so if they win by 1, you lose the 1.5, but you win the other side. So it's some people do that. And then you can find books that will take alternate type of bets, and you can go in and say, okay, I'm going to lay 3 and get plus money. And there's a lot of ways to do that. But when the prices get real high in baseball, it's really tough. And there's Andy. Andy, what happened to you?
We had an unannounced property-wide. Now, normally what happens, because I live in an apartment complex, normally what happens is it goes off in each apartment one by one. Now, some guy was telling me that, well, they were doing that illegally because the way the building is wired, everything goes off at once. So I had no notice, or I would have let you know that we had to do it later. Anyway, they seem to have done it now. They happen to have just concluded. It was probably about 10 minutes.
Well, that's all right. I opened up with a little jibber jabber about baseball, and you take off with some of this stuff. You were talking about the All-Star break, the trade deadline, who did well, who did what. And then we're going to go over to the NFL, and we're talking about the Canton game, which is Thursday.
Right.
And then I'm gonna bring up some long-term bets. A lot of people like to bet teams to go over and under the win totals. I had a couple I've been giving out. I gave out the Lions over their win total. You got to shop for prices. There's a lot of different prices out. And then also the Texans to go over their win total. But I'm going to give you some reasons why you shouldn't get too deeply involved. We'll do that later in the podcast, so stay tuned for that. Andy, go take off with the baseball. You had some good thoughts on that.
I was just going to mention that, and I think I don't remember if this was I think it was while we went on. I talked about the salary cap and all that. I think we're going to have an extended lockout. Don't know what the resolution is going to be, but I wanted to make sure that whatever it is, that there's a salary floor so that the bottom teams have to at least have a minimum amount of salary. If you're going to put in a cap, you got to put in a floor so that the bottom teams, the non-competitive teams, will at least pay out at least a certain amount of dollars so that they can at least spend to get some of the, say, second or third tier free agents who won't be able to get the big contracts with the top teams. And as I mentioned, with the top teams, maybe Major League and again, the Players Association won't go for any of this, and that's why it's going to be a protracted strike. I mean, look, baseball ended up having a lockout, I think it was, or maybe it was a walkout. I forget what the details were in '94 that canceled the World Series. So if they could do that, they could cancel an entire season like the NHL almost did one year, and the NBA did when they started that season a few years ago on Christmas Day.
Well,
As far
Andy,
as the current,
let me ask you a question, Andy. It seems like the Dodgers can spend anything they want, and they want to have go out and get Scooble. They can do a deal, and they can defer
yep,
the money and everything else.
yeah.
There's is there no cap whatsoever on what they can spend?
Well, they sort of look at it as a cap to a certain extent, and that's that you pay that luxury tax. If you exceed a certain tier, you pay a certain amount in the Major League Baseball that gets distributed, I think, amongst the other teams. And there are several tiers, so that as you go up from 300 million to 400 million to 500 million, the tax becomes greater. So it's a disincentive, but disincentives don't stop teams that have lots of money and lots of revenue sources, like the Dodgers, like the Mets, like the Yankees. But there's so many
people saying different things. There's a lot of people say they're doing way too well, and they don't want to step into that now. I mean, baseball is pretty popular at the moment.
Logic never comes into the discussion. It's all about money, and the players don't want to deny themselves any amount. If the Dodgers want to give me $1 million, the Dodgers should be allowed to, even if they've given everybody else $2 million or $3 million or $5,000. The players don't want there to be any salary cap on what teams can pay them. Let the teams decide if they want to pay the luxury tax. That's fine. I think that was sort of a begrudging agreement that the players went into, but nonetheless, and especially once you have something, you don't want to give it back.
Well, some resolution has to happen, so we just had some trades at the deadline. What's your opinion? Who won the trades? Who lost the trades, in your opinion?
Well, I think
both short term and long term.
Well, if you want to look long term, you could say the Tigers won because they got a lot of young prospects. But if you're talking about the balance of this year and the near future, and we talked about it last week, that you give up a 2-time back-to-back Cy Young Award winner in Tack Struble, and you don't even get any current major league talent in return. That's absolutely horrible. I mean, if you're going to give up a guy like that, now he's going to be a free agent, etc., and the Dodgers will sign him to a huge contract and all that. But the Tigers could have entertained better offers the closer you got to the trade deadline. The Yankees got a good player in Luis Garcia for Washington, who I think had an impact in last night's game for the Yankees, even though they lost to St. Louis. But I have to believe, and the Tigers also gave up Casey Mize, who was arguably, when he was healthy, he missed some time, the second best starting pitcher this year. I have to believe the Tigers are going to be a fade over the second half of the season, or basically be priced at very long prices because they're going to be facing a very young lineup. But I can imagine the veterans have to be decided. They were only 2.5 games out of the final wild card spot with about 50-something games to play. That's giving up on the season. And you know what? So while you don't make the playoffs this year, you still have a 2-time defending Cy Young champion to start the 2027 season. So or you may have it, because you'd probably make him the big effort, but maybe. And you see, when you do that, when Detroit decides to punt, they're basically saying, we can't afford to pay what Scooble is going to be worth. That doesn't send a very good message to other impending free agents that Detroit might be looking to go after, saying, hey, we know you're a cheap organization because you did not extend an offer or wouldn't extend an offer, said you wouldn't, to one of the best pitchers in baseball. So,
well, I guess it is a signal. I guess there's some owners that say, okay, if there's a walkout, a strike, and it's long term, maybe we should dump some of this money, these obligations. Maybe they're thinking that way.
Potential obligations. That could be part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be.
But, I like what teams like the Pirates did, who are also in playoff contention. They made a couple of acquisitions. The Padres, simply by not getting rid of Mason Miller, the closer, and they're very close to a wild card, says they're in it for this year. In fact, the GM, the Padres, is explaining why he did give up a lot of talent for some of the acquisitions. They made a nice acquisition. I forget who it was last night because I've been paying attention.
1 or 2 next year. So that's growing. I like watching it. I like playing it, betting it. It is bettable and it is beatable. And well, that's
Michigan, then Ohio State, and then Indiana last year. And I think Indiana will drop off somewhat this year. They're not going to be the surprise team. And Mendoza, of course, is now here in Las Vegas with the Raiders, and he was so much a part of it. Signetti has done a good job. Remember, he made the transition from the FBS. What was it? I think James Madden I like, Oregon I like. I'll be interested with Arkansas, who's got a very low win total. They were like 0-8 in conference play last year. I think they were maybe 2-12 overall, but they had a lot of losses by 6 points or less. That means basically a play or two away, and they end up being a bowl team, 8-4, 7-5, even 6-6. They changed coaches. They got the coach from Memphis, who had a really good run there in Memphis in the AAC, where the Tigers were, a top tier team. And basically, I think in one of his 6 seasons as coach, and that's a new culture. The Sam Pittman era in Arkansas did not go well. Looks like Kentucky and Mississippi State are the other 2 teams that are expected to be at the bottom, along with Arkansas. So we'll see how that happens. But LSU and Ole Miss are going to play that heated coach's grudge match or whatever, with Lane Kiffin going from Ole Miss to LSU. Over Miami. How can you argue with Alabama, who made it
on unders, and you see some potential injuries? That might actually be a smarter bet, because the injuries obviously will hurt the team, which will help your unders. I happen to play those 2 overs, but I didn't play them for full money. But I do like those 2, and I'll have more of that going on each week. I'll find different ones, and we'll be evaluating these injuries as they come up. Andy, who are those players that had the season-ending surgery?
Well, the key ones: Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver for the 49ers, undergoing PCL knee surgery following a persistent joint injury. He was sort of iffy to start the season or play the season anyway. And of course, Deebo Samuel is now on the roster. That was expected, that the 49ers would go after him. And the Pearsall injury just was the exclamation point, although I think they probably would have done that anyway. Chris Brazil, the wide receiver for the Panthers, undergoing surgery to repair a torn LCL suffered in practice, so that was a recent injury. Nick Scorton, an edge rusher for the Panthers, surgery for a torn ACL suffered during training camp. Will Levis, the backup quarterback for the Titans, undergoing season-ending surgery on his right AC joint. So those are 4 already. There may be others that I'm not aware of. I just called this up quickly. But those are the things to keep in mind, that even, and of course, if we switch our attention momentarily to the preseason, which starts on Thursday, you don't have to, it's not just injuries in preseason games. First of all, the starters rarely play any significant time. So if starters get injured very often, it's going to be in training sessions, or when you're scrimmaging against an upcoming opponent in the preseason, where coaches will often do that and say, hey, we want to work on this, and they want to work on that, and they do it, and they're not meeting in the regular season, which brings up the point that I was going to mention earlier. I don't get involved really with preseason games because the idea to me is that, number one, you're not really trying to win. You're trying to decide who are the 53 best players on my roster to start the season with. And the other thing is, and coaches never say, well, we're not trying to win. But if you're trying to win, wouldn't you start your best players in the 4th quarter and not the 1st quarter, if winning is the goal, because you know what you need to do to win in the 4th quarter? Obviously, in the 1st quarter, you don't. And even then, starters rarely play more than 1 possession or 2. By the way, I was going to say something about the win totals as well, and that is that you mentioned it's a long-term investment, but also if you've got when I take a look at season win totals, because of the potential injury factor, I want to find a good source, and maybe I'll do part of it myself, but I like to look at the experts who do it for a living, of a ranking and evaluations of every team's backup quarterback, because those are the most important positions. That if you lose a guy like a Joe Burrow for 6 or 7 games, or even 2 or 3 games sometimes, that's your season.
That's true. Maybe we should do a little work on the backup quarterbacks next week.
For next week, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I mean, it's hard enough to find 32 starting quarterbacks. And I think I heard a number, I don't know if this is true or not, but something like 64 or 65 different quarterbacks started last year in the NFL.
Yeah, most of them for Cleveland, I think. No, I do recall it was an unusually high number. I forget exactly what the
Yeah,
number was, but 64 or 65 would basically average at least two per team. Some
that's
teams
correct.
might have three, others might have one, but a number of teams would have two, whether it be injury or performance. Like, for example, when the Saints made their change to Shook, that was a performance-based change. A lot of teams do that. Obviously, when Joe Burrow went down, Jaden Daniel missed time. That was an injury-induced change.
Correct. And there's going to be it's a physical game. It's a tough game. Uh, it's going to happen again and again and again. And a lot of times, the best advice I can give anybody about betting sports is sometimes it's better to just keep your money in your pocket until the right time. You
Yeah.
just throw it out there and say, okay, here's 50 or 100 or $500, and hold on to it for 6 months to see if I win or lose. And you really you're not getting the kind of price you should in the first place, because the books are shaved those numbers down a lot. And you should be, when you get 10 to 1, you should maybe getting 20 to 1. That's my example of that. So just be careful with your money, because you can spend it more wisely during the season on props or first halves or first quarters, things that when you know something that's going on, you know the rosters, you know the tendencies, you see the trends. There's lots of different ways to analyze a football game. Some go with statistics, analytical stuff. Others go with trends and systems. There's
Matchups.
definitely, pardon me.
Matchups.
Yes, matchups.
Strength versus weakness, etc.
There's different ways to approach it. Not all of them are. None of them are successful 100% of the time, of course. But you can match it up. If this system and this trend and this statistical thing kind of match up, it might have a little bit more flavor to it to go after it. But like I said, I bet the Lions over and the Texans over, but I modified the bets from 3,000 each down to 1,000 each. Yeah. Why? Because
uncertainty.
Because the potential injuries, and not just to the quarterback, but to the offensive line, a running back, a defensive person, something that would make a big difference. And
you also have that extra $4,000 now to turn into 13, 14, 15,000 by rolling over bets during the season, instead of just getting plus 120 for a 4-month.
That's why we call Andy our own AI. You see, Andy Isco, AI, right here on ProLine TV. Good one. That's a very good tip there, Andy. Thank you.
Well, that's why you don't mind taking, let's say, $100 and playing it on let's say a playoff contender at 20 to 1 to win the conference or win the Super Bowl, because you're probably not going to be able to roll over whatever that $100 20 times to equal the $2,000 you could collect if you're right. But if you're getting 10 to 1 odds, or 5 to 1 or 7 to 1, that you're possibly able to increase by more than what you would win, and considering the fact that you have to wait 4 months to collect, or 6 months if you play it even earlier.
Correct. Very, very good. Andy, anything going on in the contests? I mean, we know we're weeks away from the beginning of it, but they are signing people up. How does it look compared to previous years?
It seems to be pretty much on pace. The last time I checked at Circa, I think they were a little bit over, I think it was close to 5,000. Was it 5,000 entries they already had?
In what contest?
In the Survivor contest.
That's the Survivor?
Yeah, I think that's what it.
How many did they have last year?
Right now, but 18,700 roughly.
Last year
in Survivor.
Right.
And let me see if I can find that, because they posted on. If you go to circamillions.com, they show on that page, in addition to where they have what various states are in. If you scroll down halfway, they show for each of the contests. They've already got 5 entries in the $100,000 Grandissimo entry form. They had like 69 there last year. I want to say they have about 4,000 I may be short on that, but I think it's about 4,000 in Survivor, where they had the 18,000 last year. They already guaranteed 20 million, so they need 20,000. I said they're going to get between 22 and 25 ultimately. And then in the Circa Millions, which is the pick 5 contest, they guarantee 6 million. They have not, I think they've guaranteed that for the last 3 years maybe, and they've always come close, like 5,400, 5,700. So they kept the guarantee the same, because I think a lot more people, let's say you've got a $5,000 contest bankroll, you want to enter a contest, and let's say you want to do the Circa contest. Some people might go 2 or 3 Circa Millions, because you want to win that $1 million grand prize, and all you have to do is have the best record over 90 games, and then maybe take 2 Survivor contests. What people are doing with the prize pool in that Survivor last year, 18 million, and now at least 20 million this year, instead of playing 3 Circa Millions and 2 Survivor, they may play 1 or 2 Circa Millions and take the extra couple of $1,000s that were in Circa Survivors in years past, put it into in Circa Millions years past, put it into the Survivor contest. Because remember, the only person who can eliminate you from cashing in Survivor is you. As long as you keep picking a winner, you're alive. Not that it's easy.
But there's other factors, though. Let me ask you about this. In the Circa Millions and in the, what do they call it, the Westgate, they have intermittent.
I call it the super contest classic. Yes, both the Millions and the Westgate contest have in-season contests. Okay, like right. Westgate has 6 3-week contests, 3 6-week contests, and 2 9-week contests. And as long as you enter the main contest, you're automatically entered into those in-season contests. Same thing for Circa Millions. They have 4 quarterly contests: a 4-week, a 5-week, a 4-week, and a 5-week. So there are more ways that you can win. One thing I do point out, and again, I'm not trying to make a case for Survivor or against any of the ones, because people have different preferences, people have different goals. Sometimes people have partners in certain contests. But keep in mind, in these in-season contests, number one, let's say that in the 3-week contest, let's say 14-1 is going to win the contest, okay, for the weeks 1 through 3. You can go 14-1 over a 3-week stretch, but to cash in that contest, that in-season contest, it's got to be the proper 3 weeks. 1 through 3, if you go 14-1, you're likely going to cash. If it's weeks 2 through 4, it doesn't mean anything, because that's not a separate contest. It's 1 through 3, 4 through 6, 7 through 9, etc. And keep in mind that the people who cash in those in-season contests, those records also count towards the full season contest. I don't know what the numbers are, but if you've cashed, with a 6-week contest record, which would be 30 picks, let's say you're 27-3, you got a real good chance of cashing in the main overall contest, okay? Because you've already cashed a significant portion of your season with an outstanding record. So that already is part of the 90 selections that you're going to make over the course of a season. I will mention that, the other differences. In the Westgate Super Contest, they only pay 20 places. That's why their enrollment, the number of entries, is much less than it's been in the years before Circa came in. Circa did a lot to the competition. But because you're going against fewer people, you have a better chance of cashing with a really good record. You probably, let's say you hit 65%, you probably have a real good chance of finishing in the top 10, maybe the top 5 in Westgate. That 65% might put you in about 30th place or 40th place in Circa Millions, because even though they don't have the 6,000 guarantee, they still have 5,700 entries. You're going against a lot more people. So the prizes are more, and the number of paying positions are more, but an outstanding record does better for you in Circa Millions than it does in Westgate, simply because. Now, if it's a decent record, like 62, 63, but for many years the test used to be in the Westgate when it was a contest that was basically local. We had between like 350 and 500 people. If you hit 60% and they paid 20 places, 60% would often get you right at the very bottom, 17, 18, 19, 20. But that's different. Even now with over, I think that 1,300, you still have to hit in the lower to mid 60s to cash in the top 20.
So they both the Millions and the one that they call at the Westgate that pick the 5 games a week. That's each one.
Yeah, the Super Contest.
Each one of them costs $1,000 to enter.
It's $1,500. Westgate was always $1,500. When Circa came in 2019 with the Circa Millions, they immediately set the entry fee at $1,000. After a couple of years, maybe it was 2 years, Westgate said, you know what, we'll cut ours to 1,000. But by that time, Circa had already become the most popular one, that the number of entries leveled off in the Westgate around, I don't know, maybe it was 11 to 1,500 or something like that. So they decided, I think last year, they said, we're going to go back to 1,500. We're going to increase a little bit, but at least we're going to offer a higher prize pool than we have in the past years, because the prize pool at Westgate has always been based upon the number of entries. And for a while, they did take a break. They eliminated that some years ago. Okay. Circa always guaranteed a minimum. I think it may have been $1 million or $2 million the first year. Now, of course, it's up to $6 million. So the number of entries going to Circa would increase because, last year, once the entry fee at Westgate went from 1,000 back up to 1,500. But then again, the number of entries that went to Survivor caused a lot of those Circa entries at 1,000 to become Survivor entries at 1,000. But they still got close to 6,000.
Yeah, the Westgate had a lock on the contest for a long time, and
30 something years.
Yeah, and they stuck with the same formula, and along came Circa and said, well, we're going to compete with them, so we're going to change.
To their credit, over the years, ESPN, their 2-minute drill on Friday, started covering the Westgate Super Contest in 2010. So it got nationwide exposure. And that caused the entries, which had been about 500 or something in 2010, to go up to 700, 1,100. It ultimately got to a high of about 3,300, I think, in 2018. Okay. As a result, in the teens, Westgate did start to increase from 20 to 30 to 50. I think maybe the final year or two, they did pay, I think, 100, certainly at least 50. But the reason why everything declined is because Circa came in with a different model and took a lot of business away. But fortunately, the Westgate continued to keep the contest. They added their own Survivor not quite a grandissimo, but they entered their own $5,000 Survivor contest last year, which is again this year. And they also now have I think it's the only college football contest in town, aside from the last man standing contest, which is that low, the $25 entry fee at stations. They have one for college and one for pro, but a handicapping pick 7 games a week with a $500 entry fee, I think, is now the really attractive part of what Westgate has to offer. They didn't know how it was going to go over last year. They didn't know how many entries they were going to get, but they got 1,000 entries last year for college.
Okay. All right. Well, let's people want out there, if you want to come to when you don't have to be in Las Vegas to play in these contests. Here's what you do: you get on a plane, you come out here, you get a hold of Andy, and he will tell you how to do that. And Andy is an excellent guy. He keeps on top of things. He's diligent with his paperwork, and it's
reminders.
He's a proxy.
Needed.
There are proxies that do this for out-of-town people. And they'll proxies for people in town that might get busy and not put the picks in, like me. So,
oh, you were fine.
Well, I was in the.
I did it for you. Yeah.
I was in the invitational at Circa, and
yes.
For a medical situation, I actually was drugged up for a test, and of course, I didn't realize that I would not wake up in time to get my picks in.
Oh.
I had no idea, because I'd never taken these drugs before. It's because I had to have some scans, and I missed the the deadline to put my picks in. So that was not a good thing.
I think, by the way, I had you known before you took the medications, just as a precaution, you probably could have sent your picks in early, and they could have read them for you on the show.
Yes,
I think so.
Yes, I had no idea that at 3:00 in the afternoon I would be sound asleep. That was the problem. But anyway, it's one of those things that happens in life.
Well, by the way, let me just mention one thing. Technically, you don't have to be in Vegas to sign up. If you have a trusted friend, colleague, or family relative who's going to be in Vegas, they would sign up. And if they, contacted me or some other proxy, they get someone to put the weekly picks in for them. Only keep in mind, it's got to be someone that you really trust, because all the prize money will be paid at the direction of whoever's name is on the entry form. You can have, I think the property is say, okay, I want you to make 50% out to me and 50% out to my partner, and here's that information and the tax information, etc. But yes, if you have someone who's going to be in Vegas, they will be the one who would sign up, but they would also be the one responsible for
So
directing the property.
in other words, Andy, you got to really trust this person to be okay with $6 to $18 million.
In Survivor, I think yes, exactly, because that's the person who who would get the check if if you have a breakup.
They could be living in Panama with $18 million of your money.
Yeah, and the other thing is, of course, that that if you do have a partnership where you're sharing and you want to come in, let's say you get a $50,000 prize, you could always fly in and get it delivered to you as well, as opposed to having the partner pay it out to you.
Okay, Andy.
But let me mention very quickly, because I have all this information on one page on my website, thelogicalapproach.com. thelogicalapproach.com. I talk about some of my handicapping things, but below that there's a big area which says if you're interested in entering a Las Vegas contest this year, but won't be able to be in person, need a proxy, click here. And I give you highlights of all the main contests at Circa and Westgate, and also, just as importantly, links to each of the official rules, so you can actually read all the fine print, see the payout structures, and also there's information on how to contact me if you need some questions answered or interested in how everything works, which I also include.
logicalapproach.com.
Correct.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in this week. We'll be back again next week, and we'll get deeper into the injuries, the over and under win totals. We'll talk a little bit about what happened in the Hall of Fame game, and there'll be a bunch of games about
full week of games starting, I think, next Thursday, the 13th.
Yeah, they're on the 13th. There'll be more games, but we'll be able to talk a little bit about those. Anything we hear from the coaches, obviously we'll pass that on. And we're looking for a very, very good season. There's a lot of conversation about what happened in last year's Super Bowl, about what's going on with those teams, the up and coming teams. There's a lot of quarterback issues. There's a lot of coaches that changed. How many coaches changed teams this year? How many new coaches are there, Andy, in the league? Do you have any idea?
I don't have the number exactly. I think it's somewhere between 8 and 10. But I know that even in the if you count Harbaugh as a new coach going from the Ravens to the Giants, that means 3 teams in the AFC North have new coaches. McCarthy coming back in after sitting out a couple of years. McCarthy at Pittsburgh. You got Monken at Cleveland, and you have Minter at Baltimore. So I think it's about 8 to 10 coaches, which is about typical.
Yeah, and Buffalo has a new coach, and then we should go into the offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators. Yeah. You got to remember, when this happens, a lot of things change. They're going to go from this scheme, this plan, this offensive coordinator, this defensive situation, 4-3, 3-5, whatever. You're going to have more pressure, run the ball more. I mean, there's a lot of changes that these coaches bring with them. So, the quarterbacks and all the linemen on the offensive side have to really tune into what they're doing. There's a lot of things that go on in this period of time. Yeah. And you got to remember, in the old days, we used to have, 6, 8 preseason games. Now we only have 2.
Back until 1978, when the NFL expanded, there were 6 preseason games and a 14-game regular schedule. A couple of years later, they went to a 16-game schedule and cut it back to 4 preseason games. And finally, a few years ago, they cut it to 3. I'm going to have to beg out.
I'm me too.
Be somewhere at 11. But I will promise everyone, we only have semi-annual fire drills.
Okay. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Jim. Have a good week, and we'll do it again on Tuesday.
Okay.